Hi everybody, thank you so much for stopping by. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and like, subscribe, and also hit that notification button so that when I push out a video, you get the notification. Okay, so I went back and forth about posting this video because just even, thinking about it and now talking about it is just bringing up a lot of emotions for me. If I start crying, it is okay. You're more than welcome to stop the video because remember, in my first video, I talked about self-care. And if this is too activating for you, if it brings up, some very strong emotions for yourself, please, by all means, stop the video. But if you're a G, keep it moving. But no, in all seriousness, I really went back and forth about posting this video because it is very emotional to me, or for me rather. But as I promised from the first video, I want to give you all the lay of the land, the inside scoop into everything. I want to be transparent about where I am in and on my IVF journey. So as you saw by the title, I started birth control, and I started it on yesterday. So today is Tuesday, August the 10th, and this is my second day on birth control. And as a part of the schedule, the birth control is basically used to kind of hold your cycle still, so that the fertility clinic can do everything that they need to do in order for the IVF process to begin. Or I won't say the IVF process to begin because the process has already begun with the birth control, but for them to be able to do what they need to do during the egg retrieval and transfer process. So basically the birth control is just to hold your period still, basically. When I got the birth control, there was a small voice that said, like, here we go again. And oof, I just flashed back over the last 4 years of all of the things my body has been through, as it relates to carrying a child, birthing a child, and preparing for this process that I'm about to go through again. And I know this will require me to kind of give you a backstory on everything. So for those of you who do not know, I experienced a 20-week loss, my son Liam, back in 2016. And with that pregnancy, I was extremely ill. I suffered from, or I was diagnosed with hyperemesis gravidarum, which is basically nausea and vomiting, like more than normal. I know typically during pregnancy there is nausea, there is vomiting, but from the time I woke to the time I went to sleep, I was nauseous. I threw up excess of 10-20 times a day. It got so bad to where I stopped driving places because I had to vomit in a bag before I had to pull over, and it was a nightmare. And even in that time, as I'm trying to get through this pregnancy and meeting with the doctors, it just seemed like they just minimized my experience. It brought up for me the multiple hospital visits, and I say multiple, but there was really only two. I had been to the ER twice to get fluids replenished and to get IV anti-nausea medications because the ones that I was taking orally weren't working. I couldn't keep it down. And so I had those 2 visits, and then I had a final visit to my doctor where I told them, I was like, listen, I'm sick. I feel like I'm dying. By this time, I had done lost like 15-20 pounds in like a month and a half. And y'all need to keep me. Y'all need to admit me. And so I think that was right around the 14th week of my pregnancy where I was admitted into the hospital. And I stayed for about 4 days. So that's kind of like the backstory of my and how it connects to this thought that I had of here we go again. And I think the here we go again is my my body saying here we go again. Oh, excuse me. Grab some tissue. Sorry, I need a moment. And even after the hospitalizations, the being poked and prodded, because every time I had to go into the hospital, they had to stick needles in me, and it was only to find out that later on I had what was diagnosed as incompetent cervix, which meant that my cervix was opening prematurely, and this was potentially life-threatening for my child. So I go into surgery to have my cervix stitch closed, only to find out that the stitch, which is called a cerclage, the stitch had failed. There was nothing else that could be done, and I would just have to wait until my body just went through its natural course of childbirth, because that was going to happen. My cervix was going to continue to open until my body signaled, okay, yeah, it's time to give birth. And the hope was, of course, by this time we were around 18 weeks or so. The hope was that my son remained in my womb at least to week 23, 24, which is like the viability stage. But he didn't make it. He made it to 20 weeks. So I go from, this, it was horrible. This experience with the nausea and vomiting and being poked and prodded, over to having to have surgery to close my cervix, to it failing and having to have surgery to remove it. Wow. I'm sorry. I'm thinking because I'm wondering if did I have surgery to remove it? I don't think I did. Yes, I did, because they wanted to make sure everything was out. And the thing is with this, I know you may be asking yourself, well, you should know. Like, don't you know if you had surgery? But if you were a fly on the wall during this time in my life, you will understand why. There's things even now, almost 5 years later, that will like pop up in my head, and I'm like, oh wow, I forgot about that. And so, I was experiencing a lot of trauma in that time, and so there are just things that I don't remember. Anyway, nonetheless, my point is, I was experiencing a lot of surgeries, a lot of manipulation to my body, a lot of things being pumped into my body. Um, and from the after my son had passed, at the time I was pretty fit, and I just noticed that my desire for like working out and stuff like that just kind of diminished. And then over time I started gaining weight, and at a certain period of time I had lost some weight. And then, you come to, or not you, I come to this place in my life around 2019 going into 2020 where my weight just skyrocketed, and it definitely took a nosedive. The end of 2020 going into 2021. And I think about 2019, 2020, and 2020, May of 2020 to be exact, was when I decided to get a trans abdominal cerclage. So the cerclage that I had before, the rescue cerclage to close my cervix and, attempt to save my son's life, was a transvaginal cerclage. So they go into your vaginal canal, they, kind of widen it, and they stitch the bottom of your cervix. And then that is supposed to, hold the cervix closed so that premature labor doesn't happen. And for most women, it works. For me, it didn't. And how it was described to me, which I thought was really weird, but nonetheless, the doctor said, well, it's almost like your cervix is like butter, meaning the cerclage material in and of itself is like either sliding through my cervix or sliding across my cervix. Nonetheless, it didn't work. So I did some research, and I knew from consulting with my doctor that I was going to need, and I am going to always need, a cerclage, because once you have a diagnosis of incompetent cervix, the protocol is that around like 10, 13 weeks of any subsequent pregnancies, you get a cerclage placed. And so I did some research because in my mind I was thinking to myself, well, if this one failed me in this instance, why would I get it again? Why would I take the chance of getting this again? And that is where I found out about a trans abdominal cerclage, which is basically major surgery. And what they do is they cut you like at your bikini line, and they put I forgot the material, but just think of it like a zip tie. That's the worst. That's the worst description ever. But I forgot the actual name of the material. But just think of it that way, okay? Just for sake of describing this, it's almost like a zip tie that goes around the upper third. I believe it's the upper third of your cervix. So there's a part of your cervix that is, let's just say this is like up here is the stomach area of your cervix, and down here is the vaginal canal area of your cervix. So you have a part of your cervix that's up here in the abdomen, and then you have the rest that's in the vaginal canal. So what they do is they go in and they place this cerclage, zip tie, at the top third of the cervix. And what that is supposed to do is to strongly reinforce holding the pregnancy. And I was sold, so I gathered my coin and I made an appointment, a consultation with Dr. Haney. And Dr. Haney is at an OBGYN, I believe. in Chicago. And I believe he's affiliated with the University of Chicago Medicine, I believe. But well, was I believe he is since retired. Excuse me. I believe he's since retired. So at the time that I got my surgery in 2020, I think I was like one of the last few the last round of cerclages that were placed by him. So I gathered myself, I gathered my coin, got my consultation underway, um, and I had everything planned to get the cerclage done. I flew to Chicago. I have a good friend in Chicago who hosted me and took care of me while I was there. But yet again, here was another situation where my body was going through something. And when I tell you, this surgery hurt like a bitch. Okay. I came to out of the surgery and I was in so much pain. I was in excruciating pain. And with this particular surgery, the doctor recommended that, as soon as I get home, that I needed to be walking. Even if it was a few steps here and there, I needed to be moving and walking, and not to, stay bedridden too much, because, you wanted everything to be kind of like moving and experiencing some type of movement, and I guess not get stuck. And also for, just blood circulation. You don't want to get any clots. Nonetheless, after the surgery, May 2020, I stayed at my friend's, I want to say two or 3 days, and then I boarded my flight back home, where after that, I was pretty much required to stay home. I couldn't do any driving, and I believe it was for like 10 days. 10 days, no driving, no, no none of that, but you need to be, at least walking around and getting movement, X, Y, and Z. And it was hard. It really was hard. I was in a lot of pain. It was a lot. It was a lot. And so to go through this process, and I started birth control on yesterday, but yesterday I also had blood drawn, as a part of the blood work that needs to happen before the actual, process starts. And all of this is just making it so hard to go through, because it's like I just feel like for the past 5 years my body has taken so many blows. And here we go again, is the my body saying, girl, what else you gonna put us through? But I also had another part of me that experienced this anger, and I think this is the main reason why I wanted to do this video, but I had to kind of give some context around it. I, especially since my surgery, the transabdominal cerclage surgery, May of 2020, I had experienced some extreme anger towards my body. I was angry that that my body's couldn't keep my child. And mind you, now this had just started at that time. For whatever reason, it had come to my consciousness. Before, I wasn't like upset or angry like I am, and I say am because that is something I'm still processing. but I wasn't angry then. I think I was still just in the throes of grief. That was something that wasn't at the forefront of my consciousness. But I had been experiencing this anger, and it was so visceral. And around the time that I had my surgery was around the time that the world was shutting down, right? Because of COVID. For us in Florida, things started shutting down 2 months before. So we've got COVID. I want to say, and I can't really I want to say George Floyd was killed 2 or 3 days after my surgery. So you had that. And I say all that to say there was just anger everywhere. I was angry that my body failed me. I was angry that my body had gone through all this manipulation and drugs. I was angry that I had to even have this surgery just so I could have it. I was angry. And I think that everything else around me kind of supported that anger, because I didn't really have an outlet to get it out, because on so many levels there was just anger around me. And that was just my experience as far as what was going on, May of 2020. And I go to therapy, which I encourage anybody who is going through infertility or going through the IVF, IU, any type of assisted reproductive measures, to seek a therapist. It's so helpful. But nonetheless, I go to therapy, and I had been sharing with my therapist about my anger, and it just seemed like starting with exploring the anger towards my body opened up the doors for anger about everything. It was just like, the Pandora's box of anger just and over a few sessions in processing my anger towards my body for not doing what it's supposed to do, and for having to take me through all of these procedures and medications and everything else, I came to a place of appreciating my body, of loving my body, of thanking my body. And it ended with me hating my body because I had gained so much weight. And the clarity that I gained from, multiple sessions of processing was that my body was doing what it needed to do to just help me survive. And if I looked at my situation from the standpoint of my body, I would have more appreciation for what she has done and is currently doing for me. And just having that perspective and getting in touch with what it is that my body is saying to me, it really made me, it was like, initially it was like this, man, I feel bad for her. But then it turned into this just reverence, this overall reverence for how strong she is and how resilient she is, and how she has just looked out for my highest good. And if it meant packing on some pounds to protect me, then that's what she did. That's what she had to do. And so my encouragement to anyone on this journey who is angry with their body, who is, you know, going through the motions of why can't my body just do right? Why can't my body just act right? Why can't my body just. I just really encourage you to, seek some counseling, of course, but also just gain some clarity on your body and how she is showing up for you, and maybe even gaining some different perspectives and reframing how you see and what you feel about your body. And in no way am I saying that you have to experience what I experienced or come to the conclusion that I have come to, or even have the relationship that I now have with my body. But what I will say is that it doesn't hurt to gain a little more insight so that the experience that you're having with IVF, this entire journey, isn't one in which you may potentially be beating yourself up. Because this journey in and of itself is already hard. And I would venture to say that beating yourself up doesn't make it any better. Whew. That feels good. And I'm glad I got that out. I'm glad I was able to share that with you all. And from, this moment forth, I will be very cognizant of what my body is trying to share with me and extend extend compassion towards her, extend love, extend reverence to her, because she knows what she is up against in these next 2, maybe even 10 months. I won't say maybe even. This next 10 months, I'm going to speak it into existence. I will be pregnant, with anticipation that I'll probably go through the same thing I went through with my last pregnancy with the hyperemesis. But I am going to honor her in a way that I have never done before. And I think this will help me to get through this process. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in and bearing witness to where I am today in my process, where I am on my journey. I thank you so much for listening. Again, please like and subscribe. Woo. Hit that notification bell and also leave your comments, share. And until next time, y'all take care. Bye.